Hello, Professor Lichty. This is Blaine. I hope that you're doing well so far. I'm so glad that finals is almost over. This video is my reflection on my field experience at Aquinas Catholic High School with my teacher, Mr. Tom Lee. I must let you know that I feel like I need my notes in order to help me through this presentation. So if it looks like I'm a little bit distracted, I am using my notes. I began my field experience at Aquinas at February 28th, and I was able to spend time with Mr. Tom Lee and his class for over 9 hours. So, before the pandemic hit. So I've got a lot of good input from him and from his class. And all the time that I spent with Mr. Tom Lee, he was a very energetic, passionate teacher, and he was very engaging towards his students. What he did is that he made sure that everything he did in the classroom was with a purpose, which was being an intentional teacher, as we have discussed in the beginning of our class. He tried to make sure that everything he said and everything he did was intentional, and he was able to gain students' attention through that. What he did in order to make the classroom interactive was that he arranged the desks in the classroom in a U-shaped form. So, in order for the students to interact with each other and with Mr. Lee, who would be in the center of it. So he would walk around to numerous desks and interact with the students. So that was what he did. During his teaching, he tried to make sure that it wasn't completely a teacher-centered classroom, a teacher-centered curriculum, but that it would also include the students working by themselves. What Mr. Lee was trying to do is that he was trying to guide his students instead of being just a textbook teacher. He tried to make sure he get his students engaged in the curriculum, and so that they would discover for themselves what they were learning. That's what he did in giving them the medieval pop-up book project to make a children's book on the Middle Ages, a pop-up book, which they did the work by themselves, and they did the research in what they were doing for their personal books. The first time I entered into his classroom, they were learning about the Crusades. What they were studying was Pope Urban II's speech at Clermont. What he did to rile up the people in order to take up the cross and go on a crusade against the infidels, as he would say. What he did was that he separated the class into different groups based on the days of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they read parts of the speech. And because they are high school students, because of their cognitive development being formal operational, as Piaget would say, they were able to understand more clearly what Pope Urban II was saying. One of the things that caught my eye was how Mr. Lee was able to transition from one place to another in his curriculum. That is one of the personal challenges that I'm currently facing as I'm growing to be a teacher, is how I'm able to transition from one place to another, how I'm able to use my time wisely, because when it comes to history, I am very passionate. I know that it is important to be thorough in your curriculum, but one of the things that me and Mr. Lee talked about was how we can plan our lessons, how that's important, and how to practice saying enough, not too much, not too little. he also teaches an advanced placement class. Like for students who are excelling beyond expectation, he sends to advanced placement. It's probably some of those students are learners with exceptionalities, as I've done in my project for chapter 12 of our book. Like, he has students who are learners with exceptionalities, both with disabilities and with talents. Some of those talented kids are in his advanced placement class. In his advanced placement class, he hardly does anything. Like, he allows the students to pick their own projects, and they were able to do the research by themselves, and at the end of their class, they discuss what they have learned. It is practically like what we've discussed in our best practices, like to keep the 5 to 3 minutes at the end of class sacred to see if they got the class material or not. This happens both inside and outside of his AP class. For students with disabilities, I was unable to be there. I wasn't in his earliest class, but he told me that in his earliest class there are students who are having trouble with reading. Therefore, they have a reading specialist who helps with students with reading disabilities to understand what they are discussing in class. That was one of the things that I have discussed in my project for this year, was that teachers in the general classroom co-work with special education teachers in the general education classroom, so that students are able to be in the general education classroom and interact with students who don't have disabilities, and they are able to have the benefits of special education. For being social and moral, like, Mr. Lee is a very social teacher. Like I said, he is very energetic. He is very engaging. Like, the interesting thing is that he actually is a coach. I think he is actually a football coach in the Aquinas High School. That is very ironic because I had an old high school teacher, Mr. Carney. He was a coach in my old high school in Toma. Pardon me, looking at my notes. Yeah, he was a coach in my high school. Like, Mr. Lee does his best to know the child, to know their strengths and to know their weaknesses. What I mean is that he does his best to be there for his students whenever they need him, and he helps them if they ever struggle. There was the first day I entered into that classroom, there was one moral point that he brought up in the class, was that it's optional to go to weddings, but it's important to go to funerals. Like, he added a sense of morality into that classroom when he talked about that. Like, it's important to go to funerals, even though it's optional to participate in weddings, but it's important to go to funerals. It's important to be there for others and to celebrate one's life. Especially for those who are Catholic, it is important to pray for the dead. And since it is a Catholic high school, it has Catholic values. Like, I was able to participate at a Wednesday Mass during the school day, and it was a pretty decent Mass. And one of the things that was very interesting to me was that the sports team at Aquinas, they always pray to God and thank him and ask for his help. Like, before they enter into a game and as they practice for a game, they humble themselves. And that shows that the campus has Catholic values. It has moral values. Like, for the roles of a teacher, like, I could see the role that Mr. Lee had. There was a strong hint of coach. He encourages his students to move forward in what they are doing. So I can definitely see the coach side of him. For the best uses of technology that he did, there were plenty of moments in which he showed video clips which are connected to historical moments. Like, there was one funny video called Drunken History when they were learning about the 100 Years' War. It was the story of St. Joan of Arc. Like, he used video clips in order to appeal to the students' episodic memory so that they are able to remember what they see. The fact that it was a funny clip would also make what they were learning more memorable. And as they were learning about President FDR's New Deal, he brought an example from SNL. Matt Foley, the one who lives in a van down by the river. What he did in using these video clips was that he tried to make the curriculum more memorable and appeals to their episodic memory. Yeah, there was something else that I was going to say. Yeah, I got it now. At the ending of the first class that I was with him, we were talking about how he would go to different meetings, different school meetings, getting tools that they need and interacting with his fellow peers, his fellow teachers. Like, this is what we have discussed in our first chapter, and how a teacher could professional development by having a strong peer group and having a mentor and being able to participate in the school. How Mr. Lee was able to get his students motivated to learn is like through his energetic personality, how he encouraged them to discover what they were learning by themselves. He was guiding them, but he encouraged them to look up at what they were learning by themselves and to grow more and more interested. Like, I think that the cognitive theory, the main cognitive theory that I think what I've witnessed in his class was from Vygotsky in chapter 2. The reason why I say that is because according to Vygotsky right here, like, it is through interactions with other people that enable students to learn. And as one learns, that person develops. That development of that person grows. That's what Vygotsky believed in, and I think that makes much sense. Like, it is through interactions with others, having good interactions with your teacher and with peers, you are able to learn so much more. Like, yes, it does depend on your grade, upon your grade or your age, like, because as you get older you develop more, but you learn more through interaction. And that is where I agree with Vygotsky, and that is what I have seen in Mr. Lee's class, was a lot of student and teacher interaction. Not so for his AP class. It was more interaction at the ending of it, but it was mostly doing projects for themselves. I really have enjoyed my field experience with Mr. Lee. He is a very good man, and he is very passionate about history. Like, he has helped me to focus more about how I would plan my lessons, how I should practice, how I use my time. And he also talks about interactions with peers and having a mentor. And like using technology for best practices, like in timing students when he was trying to quiz them, and using video clips. Like, one of the things I plan to do as I teach is use some video clips from documentaries to give a visual aid in appealing their episodic memory. And also I'm thinking about using my passion for music. Like, one of the things I plan to do if I ever teach the Civil War is sing the famous song, Richmond is a Hard Road to Travel. It talks about the first couple of years of the Civil War, so all in 5 minutes. It was really a pleasure to work with Mr. Lee, and it was definitely amazing to see how a teacher can truly interact with the students and to see a true intentional teacher at work. I apologize for stumbling a little bit in this video, but this is my reflection and my experience, and I am glad that I went through it. Again, it has been a pleasure working with you and with this class once again, and I definitely feel like I've learned a lot more this time. Thank you very much. Have a great summer, and God bless you.